lounging, son.
Welcome to another episode of Loungin. My name's Ryan.
And I'm Mario.
And today we're going to talk about pretty huge topic in comics today, representation, diversity in comics. Even all these years later, the comic industry's been around since, I believe, the 30s. And you still see the majority of creators, I think, are still white males, right? I mean, women aren't represented as much as I think they should be. I mean, while the representation has grown, we're not where we should be, right? And the same thing with creators of color.
I think there's been more progress in the last 10 years than there have been in the last 80 years.
Right.
Combined.
I was talking about it on the podcast with Dylan yesterday. When I interviewed Gene Yang, he said that Wonder Woman was created in 41. Yeah. Right. It took 40 years before a woman wrote that comic.
That's crazy.
That's insane to me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, having a woman write Wonder Woman, that makes fucking sense. Yeah. If you want to grow readership, that's how you exclude women, right? If you wanted to bring women in to read, creators will bring them in. So
it's no surprise that obviously you go to any comic book store or convention, you see mostly guys, but
and it's grown, right? Like
it's changed. It's gotten a lot better, but obviously 20 years ago, it's all dudes. But you can kind of see why. Where you have one of the most well-known female characters, and it's never been written by a woman up until
the 80s.
80s.
That's fucking insane, dude.
So even though there's plenty of guys that are written well, but still, it's just there's plenty of women that why wouldn't a woman just write it?
Exactly,
and both, trade off.
Right, and I've said this too, not to say that a man can't write good female characters.
Greg Rucka.
There you go. Took the word right out of my mouth. I mean, Greg Rucka is a prime example of the strong female characters that he's written, and it feels as authentic as you can get before having a woman write.
Yeah, from a male perspective, it's
right. I don't know he's how else to say it, but it's none of that cheesecake shit that was prevalent in the late '90s, early 2000s.
No, I mean, look at something like Lazarus. That's not remotely the point.
No,
at all.
No, one of the most badass female characters I think created.
But it's nowadays you are Kelly Sue DeConnick with Captain Marvel, and you're starting to see Kelly Thompson's writing all that stuff, and Marjorie Liu obviously has been around for quite a while.
Right.
So
Mariko Tamaki as well.
So there's a lot of, and then with the characters, you see Miles Morales. It's cool that he's in the game now. He had his own movie, it's an animated movie, but it's still obviously something we wouldn't have seen 30 years ago.
Right, and we had Black Panther. But still, though, I think
it's still a drop in the bucket.
Right.
Where it's just a couple of examples, other than 5 of the main examples you can think of, then you start struggling to think of anything.
Right, and you guys could say oh, you're a fucking white male. Why does that bother you? And it's well, it bothers me in the sense that I don't want to read the same shit. I want to read authentic stories.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I want to read genuine experiences put down on paper, whether it's for Marvel or DC in a superhero book, or whether it's from Image when you have a book like Excellence, written by Brandon Thomas, art by Kari Randolph. That's a prime example. You're seeing these books kind of get attention, right? You're seeing Bitterroot with David Walker, Chuck Brown, Sanford Green, another prime example of a really great book, and you're seeing diversity in the creators.
Yeah. Well, I think in general too. I think on Comic Rogers, I've mentioned a few times that you're also starting to see more and more Hispanic names on the creative teams, random artists. Some of them I haven't heard of. They're probably have only been around for a few years, but more and more and more, as in the last 10 years, you see more and more diversity, even in the names. And I'm talking about letters and inkers. I'm not talking about the main artist or the writer, but 15 years ago there was no Gonzalez's on a Marvel comic,
Yeah, I mean, what's really weird? Brazil has a huge fucking pool of creatives that are coming out of there. I don't know if you've really paid attention to that. The only reason
Paulo Rivera.
The only reason I'm noticing is because when I look at the analytics on the Comic Knowledge website, Brazil is a huge aspect of viewership from my site, and it blows my mind. It's what the fuck? I know I've interviewed creators like Ivan Reyes. I think it's from Brazil. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. And there's other creatives that I've interviewed that are from Brazil, whether they still live there or not. And it's pretty crazy to see that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
but everywhere. I mean, there's cons in Mexico. I think one of the cons in Mexico is huge in Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's fucking huge.
Yeah.
So there's definitely interest all over the world.
Yeah, I think
Pepe Larraz is Mexican. I think he lives in Mexico.
That dude's fucking dope.
And he's great.
That dude is so fucking dope.
I think he currently still lives. He like works out of Mexico. So
I think a lot of them do. They don't live here.
No, a lot of
creators that are from out of the country are like
a lot of them stay like
there.
Gabriel Delotto. I mean, he's Italian, but he lives in Italy.
I think Mike Deodato Jr. I believe as well, right? I don't think he lives in the States.
I don't think he lives here either.
Yeah. He's another.
Eddie Granum, I think, doesn't
he's
live.
Fucking Brazilian too, isn't he? Mike Deodato, or am I wrong?
Maybe I'm not sure.
I don't want to butcher this too much, you know.
But yeah, a lot of them don't come over here. They kind of just stay in their native because there's no need to nowadays. I mean,
why? It's all digital.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. I was watching another video on YouTube about how the British creators, you know, late 80s and stuff, especially, you know, tying into Vertigo when we were talking about, like, they used to have to mail their shit. That's fucking crazy. You imagine how much, like, no wonder. And they still got those books out monthly, and they were shipping, like, between pencilers, inkers, writers getting the scripts, or you had to
that's why if you look at books from, like, the late 80s, you see more names on there because you had a bunch of people whose job was putting it together.
Right. I mean,
where you don't really need that anymore because now everything's kind of digital.
Well, yeah, and I think that's why you also see less people on art, right? You see one person doing everything.
One or two. You maybe
everything. Like they do the coloring, they do the and
that's starting to get more and more common.
Penciler or inker, it just says artist.
Yeah, art by as opposed to like, you know, back in the, like if you look at a book from 1985, sometimes it had like 6 names on there.
Yeah, I've seen more.
But it was more complicated back then.
Yeah, I mean it took a lot to, especially to hit that fucking that schedule. You know what I'm saying? And nowadays, it seems like hitting your schedule doesn't really. Well, I mean that started in the '90s, where hitting your schedule didn't really mean anything.
It depends on the emphasis, especially cause nowadays. I mean, this is another conversation for another day. But like comparing art from 1982 versus something from like Assad Ribic, however you pronounce it. But you know what I mean? Like it's not comparable. There's a reason why the art Olivier Coipel.
Yeah.
Like that, you just can't do that month and month and month and month and month. It takes a long time to do that.
Yeah, and then just say it's bi-monthly, you know. Yeah. But like you said, that's for another day. We could fucking talk about scheduling and people not getting their books out on time.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's another topic.
That I could go on for days about that shit. But
so as far as diversity is concerned,
diversity, I think.
Well, one of the questions I think, one of the, I guess the responses they hear often is like, why does it matter? Like, why don't you just hire the best person for the job or whatever? Like, I think it's more of like, it's just kind of weird at some point when you look around. Like, why is everybody white?
Right.
Like, why? It's not necessarily that you have to force it, and it's not to say that certain characters shouldn't be white. Like, that there's nothing wrong with being a white character.
Right.
But then it's just that when you look at, you look at the wall of all the DC and Marvel comics, and you just see nothing but white guys, and you're like, why is it that way? Like,
yeah.
Plus, it's also just fictional, so clearly they're being made this way. So.
Exactly.
Why do these characters have to be? Why couldn't some of them be people of color, whether they're black or Hispanic or Asian or whatever else?
Yeah, you could say these characters are created in the 30s, the 40s, and that's fine. You know what I mean? But like, but there's new characters that can be created. You don't have to keep with the same.
Yeah.
And don't get me twisted. This isn't just about characters. This is about the diversity of creators in the industry as well.
Yeah.
Now if you look at DC Marvel, right, you could almost see it's like they only have so many.
Yeah.
Right? Black creators there.
Yeah.
Asian creators there. I mean, it just, and it's not about just picking the right person for the job. It's like expand where you're looking for the creators.
Yeah.
You're fucking like.
Well, yeah. If you look at the list of creators that are involved at Marvel or DC, you're looking at a lot of people either in LA or in the middle of somewhere in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably in around an area that's diverse.
New York?
Well, that used to be that way. Nowadays, it's not like that. You think everybody is in New York?
No, I mean, what about LA?
The creators are from all over the country.
LA?
But how many people actually live in LA?
There's a fucking shit ton of people that live in LA.
Not as much as it used to be. I think a lot of people left. Oh. There's a reason why there aren't a lot of signings anymore. Because I think a lot of people actually don't live here anymore.
People hate LA.
They go to Portland or they go to different areas.
Okay, but
you start looking into other areas that necessarily aren't the people. You don't look at your immediate circles. You start looking outside of that immediate circle to see what other
people. I've got one suggestion. Fucking Instagram. You don't need to fucking travel to find these artists. I spent the entire quarantine looking at just new artists because I was like, fuck, I want to see. There's no new books. So I went back, read old stuff, and then I'm also like, you know what? I'm going to look for some new creators that aren't working for the big publishers, right? And maybe try to help shed some light on their stuff.
Yeah.
Now, maybe, you know, like I found some women creators. I found some, you know, like I found a diverse group, right? But that's just a drop in the bucket. You know what I'm saying? Like the fucking publishers can find these creators easily. They fucking have departments. Don't you have like departments where like you're looking for talent recruitment? Or do you just want to fucking have the same tired, recycled stories because you have the same creators? Like, no offense to any of the people that are in the industry that were still in the industry in like the 60s or 70s, but like, come on. You need youth. Yeah. You need some fresh ideas. And if you
if you want to diversify your audience, if you're not looking to keep the same people that are 55 years old at this point.
Which, I have my problems with DC, but I think DC's a good example of looking for a new audience, right? Like the YA genre and the all ages genre has grown, right? So like they're doing these new DC Inc. or DC Zoom, I think. Maybe they're doing just called DC Kids now. But they're putting out these like new books. Like they had that Green Lantern book. I can't remember the name of it, but it started South Korean kid as a Green Lantern. Yeah, that book was dope as fuck. You know, and then they had like an Oracle, a Barbara Gordon story. You know, they had a Cassandra came back girl. So like they are capable of doing it. They're just not doing it enough, and they're not shedding light on these projects. They're not giving them time to breathe. You know, like they're quick to cancel on this cancel culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, it's not doing the numbers. We gotta get rid of this book. We gotta do something else. Oh, it's because
like Power Man and Iron Fist. You know,
that book never should have ended when it did. It could have
just given them a chance.
Yeah. But again, you find these books that are unique, and people like them, and yet still they fucking cancel them. Like,
I don't know that it's a lot of people though. In a lot of these cases. It is, I mean, the sales are low, but at the same time, your argument is, well, how come you're not promoting it more, or pushing it to elevate as a point where people read it and see it?
Yeah. So I mean, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it starts at the top with the publishers, like they're not willing to like seek out the talent, or because I mean, you can say like, oh, well, there just isn't that many. Creators that are women.
Right.
Like, it's not true, though.
I think it's a combination of many things. I know this is something. I know he got canceled. Aziz Ansari, but he actually wrote a book around the time he started working on Master of None on Netflix. Mm-hmm. And you know that the first season's like every episode's like a lesson. And his best friend in the show, I think, is Japanese American, and he specifically wanted to have a cast that was diverse because like I don't think most of the cast is not white. Mm-hmm. And he talks about, in the book he was writing about how he set out this goal to have a Japanese American, or I think he wanted especially Asian, but like Japanese, Korean, whatever he could find, as his best friend in the show, because he wanted to promote like an Asian actors. But then he found out it was really hard to find someone that he liked because there just wasn't that big of a pool. And he kind of he talked about that at length, at like, what do you look at? Like, what's the problem? Like, on one hand, here's this guy that's specifically trying to promote, you know, an Asian actor to be on a show, but then the pool's not small. So who is it because there aren't enough Asian? Like, at the end of the day, it's like it's a complicated issue. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, then you have to ask the next questions. Like, how come there's so few Asian people involved in the movie industry? And part of it is there's less roles. And the roles that do have are racist as hell.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm talking about the TV and movie industry.
So if we want more women, we want more Asian, more black, more, and go down the line, creators, right? Yeah. They have to be represented in the comics they're reading. If they're not represented, they're not going to... Why are they going to want to do comics?
They just feel like, why would I try?
Yeah, I'm not
something I'm going to be able to do.
Exactly.
Which is, to be fair, that's also why you see Bitterroot succeeding at Image as opposed to Power Man and Iron Fist, where clearly at Image, they were allowed to do what they wanted and have their own approach to things.
Right. And I think I don't know who's doing the promoting. I don't know. I don't think Image handles that. I think the creators do it at that point, unless endless. I think there's a certain deal, right? I think you can make a certain deal, like, okay, well, we'll do this, right? But then they take a little bit more cut or something. I don't know.
I don't know the extent of.
But Bitterroot was promoted pretty well.
Yeah.
I think Excellence it could be promoted a little bit better. I try to promote it on my side because I know I personally.
But it is a smaller book that didn't. You know, the general public isn't really
right. But Bitterroot has already gotten a
Bitterroot's way bigger than.
Yeah, they got a deal already with fucking Legendary Pictures, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, bottom line is there needs to be more representation in comics in order to grow the pool. If you're saying, like, I mean, that's a real problem. Like, maybe there just aren't enough creators wanting to do comics because they don't feel like they don't feel an attachment to it because they don't see themselves in the book, right? Like, I think Miles Morales is a huge example of that. Like, people are like, because anybody, like, you read Spider-Man, anybody can imagine themselves in that costume because like he's fully masked.
Well, that's one of the things I like. Todd McFarlane talks about that, and one of the reasons why he made Al Simmons black. Yeah, that's because he like at some point I think he was thinking about it like, no, why would anyone think Spider-Man's white? Like
Spider-Man could be anything under there.
He could be Puerto Rican. He could be black. He could be whatever because he can't see his skin. Exactly. So why does it matter?
It shouldn't. You know, you're not. It shouldn't matter what.
It doesn't matter. That's really at the end of the line. It doesn't matter because it's also talking about a kid from New York. He's actually a kid that's not wealthy in New York. You're probably talking about a minority.
Right. Yeah, you're not.
It's other way around. It's probably more likely talking about.
Right. And New York is such a melting pot.
Yeah. You know, which is how you get Miles, and Miles makes perfect sense.
Miles makes complete sense, and I think, and like they kind of promote. Miles Morales,
he's pretty big.
But I think he got big from Into the Spider-Verse. I think prior to that, he was popular, right? But now he's mainstream.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who the fuck Miles Morales is. And
this is a good example of what I'm talking about. Where in the Spider-Verse movie, he wakes up and his mom's talking to him in Spanish. She's babying him in Spanish. She's I think she's Dominican or Puerto Rican, I think. Mm-hmm. And his dad's a black police officer. But you get to see the both sides.
Yeah.
But you know, in New York City, how many kids live that life? That's their life every day. And I know people are like, what does it matter why do we have to force all this diversity? I'm like, because there's tons of kids that all they see is like this white dude in a nice house.
Well, and that's the problem though. Why is it looked at as forced diversity? It's not it's just creating new characters.
I think it's just you do both.
Yeah, like, but it doesn't have to.
You can have Peter Parker, right. And you can have another kid that's just a mixed kid from New York. Like Kamala Khan's another good example too. She represents a bunch of other people that have never gotten to see their type of family, their type of existence anywhere in public, like in a public forum. And now you have this character that seems like, oh shit, like that's how my life is.
Yeah, see, and I like that. I like creating new characters as opposed to retconning old characters or changing for the sake of changing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't want to get into it because I don't want to get any hate. But like Iceman was a prime example to me. I didn't understand it. I don't really get like the reasoning behind why they did it. I mean, not to say that the Iceman book, you know, like wasn't great. I know a lot of people love that book. But create new characters. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to just. And maybe people don't want to create new characters because they're like, well, I don't fucking own it. So I'll just go over here and I'll create my own character over there.
Well, a lot of times, and this is another conversation too. There's a lot of characters that people create and then nobody knows what to do with it. Like you can tell something like Bucky, which that's obviously not a racing, but like or diversity, but it's like they clearly don't know what to do with him.
Right.
And it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Or you think about like Young Avengers, like Patriot and those guys, they just disappeared. Where are they? Because nobody knows what to do with them.
Exactly. I mean, I think a good example of diversity entering mainstream publishing was Milestone. Milestone was a perfect example in the 90s of, you know, Dennis Cowan, Dwayne McDuffie, Christopher Priest, Derek Dingle, and man, I can't remember. There's one other guy, but they started Milestone, and they're like, and instead of doing it separate, they brought it to DC. So they had the push of DC Comics behind them, and they were tackling like stuff like teen pregnancy, racism, like real fucking shit, real world problems in their books, and you know. The fucking market crashed in the 90s with comics, so I think that kind of
derailed everything.
It derailed Milestone. Yeah. Now,
it almost sounds like you have an interview or something coming up, maybe that they should check out later.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So, you know, but like I was a fan of Milestone too, and I love Static, right? And then the Static Shock cartoon, I watched that with my brother and stuff, and I think, you know, as I was telling, it was Dennis Cowan. I interviewed him, and I was telling him, like, this is the time, like, this is the perfect time for a book, that world to come back. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is the absolute perfect time to see the return of those characters. Yeah. Because all the themes in those books are still prevalent today. Yeah. They're still fucking happening, all that shit. And yeah, you know, I mean, I don't think I could really say anything else other than that, you know, I want to see also for my, you know, I have a daughter, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I like that there's more women creators in comics. I like to see that there's more women characters as well. Yeah. And I would like her to, you know, I'd like to be able to share my love of comics, but like I don't want to just hand her like, oh, here's a Batman comic. Yeah. Not to say that she can't like that too, but like I would like her to be able to see herself and be like, oh man, I want to be like both. Her. I want to be. Yeah. I like her writing.
It's a lot about seeing. It's about seeing everything. It's not. Yeah. It's not about taking away things. It's about just adding to it.
Exactly.
So no one's gonna take away Bruce Wayne. No one's gonna take away Peter Parker just because Miles is there.
Right.
It's not about taking away. It's about adding. So now you can read Peter and you can read Miles. Mm-hmm. That's it. Exactly. That's really all it is.
Yeah.
And Kamala Khan, like a character, like that's a character we haven't really seen from a background that we haven't really seen in like mainstream comics.
Right. And she took off.
And she's awesome. I think it's one of the best, well-written new characters in the last like 10 years.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. She's for sure.
It's been great. Like that series has been good since it started.
Definitely.
So, yeah, and I think a lot of it. I think there's also a conversation about the audience. That's also a big problem. One of the big things that you see, I think, from looking at the audience from 1995 or even 2003 versus 2010, 2015, 2020, is it's kind of segmented. I think you're dealing with a lot of older generation that don't want to check out these books. Mm-hmm. And I think you're dealing with a lot of younger generations that only want to check out these books, and that there's less kind of in between. That it kind of splinters the groups. I know people that are younger that are maybe in their mid-20s that only want to check out stuff written by like Kelly Thompson or something like that, and then you show them like Long Halloween, they're like, oh no, no thanks. And so now you get this kind of like two sides of the older. And older isn't even that old, like 35, but you know, the perspective's really different when you're 35 versus 23.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know. I don't know how to fix that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother topic. That's a whole another topic. Before we fucking derail too much, though. Yeah. More diversity, creators, and comics. That's what we need to see. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
This is kind of just one of the conversations we're going to have.
I mean, this is a topic that, I mean, I've been talking about for the past couple of weeks, and I wanted to get on video. I wanted to chat with Mario about it. You know, Dylan and I kind of talked about it on our podcast. Pretty sure Mario and the guys on the Comic Marauders probably talked about it. But yeah, I think on that, we'll probably get out of here. You guys can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. TheComicLounge.com is where you can find us as well.
Yep.